and welcome back to Barry's Poetic Session. I'm your host, Barry, a.k.a. The Dark Knight, and with me on my left is the artistic, the musical, the Renaissance man himself, the creative Roy. And on my right, the brother from another mother, the bold Brother Black in the house. And today's topic, dating yourself first. Why someone would be with you when you don't want to be with yourself. Let's talk about it. And let's get into it. Guys only today. So we get,
Well, I was going to ask if we wanted to talk about a different topic because she isn't here. We could have that little discussion first, or we could dive right into this. I'm flexible. I don't want to be the first one on this one because I already know that what I'm going to say is going to. I'm hoping will change some things.
You want to change, and
I was perfectly happy with the topic that was presented to us.
Go right ahead.
The person who presented the topic is not here.
but we will give credit in the credits. So keep watching and find out who suggested it. But let's go. So, Brother Black, what are your thoughts on dating yourself first?
I think you have to be comfortable with yourself anyway. If you want to have a stable relationship with somebody else, because people will at some point will pick up on that, or you'll lack confidence and you'll self-destruct in your relationship if you don't want to be with yourself.
So I don't know if this should be dating yourself from a dude's perspective.
I just think it's just being comfortable with yourself. Like a friend used to ask me, like, you go out by yourself a lot of times, don't you? I was like, well, yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna sit at home and I wish I had a date, or I wish this person would talk to me, or whatever.
How many times have you taken yourself to a fancy restaurant just to be?
Countless times. Or at this point, I can't count.
Countless times.
Countless.
And how many times have you taken yourself to the movie just to see the movie?
Countless times.
Mary?
I did myself a double feature. Like we watching two movies. When I went to visit my sister in Memphis, Tennessee, my sister's a workaholic, so while she was working, I was checking out the city. So I went to all the restaurants, to the movies. I saw. Now, when I was here, I did a double feature by accident. I saw one of the most horrific movies and went to see a different one. But still, I've been to a number of movies. I'm a movie buff. I love movies and I love to eat, so I love restaurants. So I hit all the restaurants, especially in Memphis when I was, visiting my sister and she wasn't around. Shoot. Tiff says, let's go to barbecue. Like the dude who made a barbecue here in Cincinnati, he died, and I can't mess with no barbecue anymore in Cincinnati because I've been spoiled.
So when you talk about a date, what is the difference between you going by yourself versus going with someone? What is that difference? Is that still
that difference is 2.5 to 3 times the cost. Mentally, physically, and financially.
Well, I don't think Roy was talking about financial.
I know.
But that is a point. That is a point.
Yeah.
I do think the difference is you're not worried about if you're pleasing this other person, versus you're just concerned about whether you like it or not.
Whether or not you're enjoying the experience that you are out on.
Right. So I may be enjoying the experience. I may not. I may do like Barry and wind up with a double feature, but since I don't have somebody else, that's not a concern. Then, so how did I impress this person? Did this person not like it? Therefore, do they not like my choice?
So there's a lot less self-review going on, a lot less control of the circumstances. You are just going to that particular event to experience that event. And whether or not that person is enjoying themselves is absolutely irrelevant because it's just you. And you picked the experience to begin with. You didn't have a long discussion with somebody about, like, are we going to go have barbecue or pizza and all that kind of stuff, right? You're just like this and this, right?
That's it.
Is that the same as a date?
So let me just say this. That's why I was saying it's from a female perspective, dating. Like, dudes just go out. So if I'm going out to a restaurant, I'm usually hitting the bar because I can fit in and don't have to wait for a table when I'm with a person or people. So I don't have to wait and then either talk or just awkwardly silent or what have you, if it's new or been there. But I was going to say that I'm still can be self-reflective, especially when I eat. That did I make the right choice? Was this good? Yeah, I picked a good one. So I'm more self-reflective myself, but I'm not trying to put on a show, as they say, when or entertain somebody. I'm just either focused on my food or the surroundings, or just the movie. I don't have to focus in or be diverted when I'm at a movies, for instance.
You know what? I'm going to put out this challenge. I would love some people in the who are viewing this to put down some comments about what their difference is between dating and not dating, because it just sounds like that the experiences that we're describing aren't really dates.
No.
Because you're just going out and doing the thing. But yet there are people talking about dating themselves, and that's part of the topic. It's like this dating yourself part. You both were like, hey, this is like whether or just finding out more about yourself in some way. But are you actually reflecting you're reflecting on yourself, whether or not you like what you ate, but are you having some kind of contemplative moment of reflection somehow in there?
You might be having a contemplative reflection about yourself.
Not at the movies, though.
That's a whole nother story.
Choose the right movie.
Right, but I'm just saying that if I'm, when you're dating or when you're going to the movies with people, I'm focused on my partner as well as the movies, and did I get my popcorn and all that good stuff. But on the movie, I'm engrossed in the movie. I have like tunnel vision, but I have to move back a little bit when I'm on a date with somebody, and I can't have that tunnel vision and be engrossed. I have to also be in the moment and be present with the person who's with me, depending on the person.
And there's the aspect of you and that person discussing what you saw.
Well, that's after.
I mean, you're after, but you do have.
You could be at the park. You could just be walking down the street and just see somebody fall down the flight of stairs. One of you might laugh. The other one might be like, "Oh, this is a person, all right." Like you have that difference, that difference of the experience to discuss.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah.
Now, it can be certain self-reflective thing. Like you might look at a movie like, wow, when I was a kid, I would have never laughed at that. Why am I laughing at it now? Or, why did I cry like 4 or 5 times at The Color Purple when it first came out, as opposed to making fun of certain dramatic things I used to do as a teenager. So that's a self-reflective thing about how do I feel about women, and is any of me representative of how the men treated women in that movie? That's kind of like a discussion with myself and self-reflecting. But now here's my question, okay? Is there more of a stigma for women going out by themselves and quote unquote dating themselves versus men going out by themselves?
And that is kind of one of the underlying comments here. Why don't we ask our female panelists?
So funny. But I was just going to say that if men go out to eat by themselves, they're going to a bar, and it's acceptable for men to go to the bar, as opposed to you see women at the bar, they're they're stereotyped. If they're not in a group or what have you, if they're going by themselves, I think there's more of a stereotype. But then is it dating? So, once again, what is the definition of dating? So if you go with the standard of superficial dinner and a movie, sure, done that. But dating in terms of, how do I feel about myself and practice dating? It's like practice kissing and then go on a future date and I practiced or been at the restaurant and now I've felt it out or whatever. I'm not really into that.
What about friend dates? Would you call some of the times that you hang out with just your friends dates?
No. My wife would. I would.
To me, a friend date is just hanging out. So
I don't.
So I might hang out with myself, might hang out with friends.
And when you're in those events,
I don't call that.
do you? Well, no, that's a terminology.
No. What I was going to say is my wife, for instance, she'll go out with people and call it a date. And I'm like, okay. But I'm not going to be as interactive. She's an interactive person. I'm not.
So when you go on you have the romantic date, you have this friend event that you go out on, and you have the ones that you go by yourself. When you go to a friend event,
When I go to a friend event, it's similar to when I go by myself. If I want to step back and disappear into the wall, so to speak, and just be by myself, even though there are people with me, I can do that. But if I'm on a date, I need to be engaged, or it's considered an engagement that I'm not necessarily wanting to be a part of. That's why I said I don't necessarily call it a date, because I'm not engaging other people. Because I'm more I like being by myself, and I enjoy it, and I'm cool with it. You know what I mean? I don't have to be all.
that is what I'm asking about, like how the level of interaction and level of concern that you have. Ovi, what about you?
I'm the type of guy I can just sit there and be at home by myself. There's some people might come around. We might get a conversation, going. And for me, I'm still comfortable with myself, with my views or opinions. So it doesn't matter for me. It's not about going there and fading into the background.
Right, but I'm just saying, in a date, you can't fade in the background. Is considered as a bad date. Is what I'm saying.
Well, if it's a bad date, you might give off hints that it's a bad date. You just
No, I've fallen asleep on dates, and they didn't pick up the hint.
well, that's not a hit. That's an outright blow to the gut.
Hold on, but I'm saying is they didn't notice I had sunglasses on, so they didn't know I was asleep.
Oh, you pulled a Lawrence.
No, I pulled a Dark Knight. I've done it a couple times.
Well, it's very rare that you have prescription sunglasses. You can't get them first, but
Yeah, I used to have those. Yeah. Back in the 90s, I was very good at it.
I would still, even if it's a bad date, I might still be aware of that person's feelings, at some point, while at the same time trying to express that maybe we ought to go home.
So there's a lot more empathy involved in the dates when it's a romantic date. Because like when I hang out with my friends, when they come over, whatever, I am worried about how they're feeling. I get a mixture of friends who are extroverts and introverts and all the rest of the stuff. And I even do this at work with some of my coworkers. If I see somebody who's really starting to shy away or bottle up, I'll try and bring them in. I'll try and engage them in a conversation. I try to make sure that people are participating in the conversation that look like they want to get something in. Like
I'm running from you.
right? But that's like what I do. So in that respect, I have I have a degree of the same energy in that kind of date as I do on a romantic date. I want the ending to be different,
Of course.
but that still takes me back to the whole question of like when I'm by myself and I'm supposed to be dating myself. Am I giving that space to some of the voices that I have, some of the thoughts that I have? Am I letting those explore, and I'm reflecting, kind of detaching? Because in a what people would say is a good romantic date is it's just you and them and the experience. The rest of the world doesn't matter. The rest of the world will be part of the experience, but really it's just you and them on the planet at that moment. Mm-hmm. And when you go, like, I'll go to a restaurant by myself and bring like a sketchbook, jot down some ideas. I'll interact with some people that are coming by because I'm a bit of an extrovert, so I'll say some stuff. But I'm just trying to imagine whether or not I'm having such an intimate experience that I'm having by myself as I am with somebody else, or even friends or family that are sitting down and having conversations. Because there are people that I will hang out with that I don't have that connection with. And I don't like those places. I'll leave those events if I'm there and I'm like, everybody's just existing in their own realm and I have no interaction with them. Kind of like what you were saying, like if the date isn't going well for you, you just kind of like bottle up, simmer down, whatever, let them have their little excitement and then that kind of stuff. And like that's, if I can't seem to connect, that's what I will do. So, and that one, And that still feels different than when I go out on a date by myself. Because when I go out on a date by myself and the world is still going around me, it doesn't feel so much like I want to be part of something. I want to connect. I don't feel removed from the experience that these other people are having while they're swimming or grilling or dancing. And I'm not feeling any of these people. It feels different than if I just go to the park and just go for a walk, because I'm not judging whether or not I need to interact with those people. It's just me navigating that world at that time. I'm not too comfortable with that idea of the dating myself, but like I'm just working that thought out. That's all.
John, and like I say, term dating yourself is kind of awkward because really,
Obviously, we didn't come up with that. Some dudes dating yourself. We didn't come up with that.
We hear it all the time.
We hear it, but we didn't come up with it. I mean,
because for me, I do think it is about, are you comfortable with yourself sometimes, just hanging out with yourself? Then if you're more comfortable with yourself, maybe you can be more comfortable on a date with somebody else because you're not worried, about how you present yourself to somebody else. You know who you are. You're going to be who you are, whether you're with yourself, whether you're with somebody else.
so I guess the question is, can you be with someone else if you're okay with being by yourself? I guess it's probably better for us since it's just guys here. Because I was going to say that for me, like if I'm being introspective, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to date for a while and just see, where I'm at, what I'm trying to do.
You don't have any pressure on yourself to date someone.
Well, I don't put pressure on myself to date someone, but I was going to say that I don't have, what's the right word? Like, I'm not looking for somebody right now. I've been in those situations where I'm not looking for anybody right now. I'm going to just focus in on the things that I like to do and the things around me. So I'll go to, I would, do the things that I like, whether the person liked it or not, would be a problem. So for instance, I've been going to the poetry spot since the 90s. Not everybody's data is like poetry. So that's one consideration, like, okay, do you go without them or do you go with them? Because they don't want to be there. How do you navigate that? I don't have that issue, but that's more of not dating myself. That's just more being introspective and being by myself and then taking account, okay, how do I want to incorporate somebody in the future and what am I looking for? And make, hopefully better decisions than I did in the past, That's how I look at it going forward. Like, okay, I didn't necessarily mess up by dating this person, but I'm not going to pick that type of person anymore because I'm looking for something different. And if I want something different, I have to choose a different type of person. And I guess that's my introspective. I don't need to date to figure that out.
That part's true. But I think sometimes when people talk about dating themselves, it comes from a respect, which is why I ask, is there a stigma with women versus men? That there's a pressure on women to be with somebody versus men don't have this pressure to be with somebody.
As much, right?
As much. So guys can maybe go out and do stuff and they're hanging out and they're not pressured. So for a woman, you say, well, you're not comfortable with yourself. Maybe you're more comfortable with yourself than you would be comfortable with another person. And that's what I think probably what dating yourself probably meant at the time versus probably what it means for us.
Yeah, and then are you comfortable with yourself and then the comfort you are with yourself, then is it easier to then be with somebody else? And I guess that can make it easier or harder. Like, hey, I can't date you because I'm not feeling. I did an introspection and you're not the type of person I want now. I'm moving on to another type of person.
One of the more common phrases of this particular, the way that I've seen it applied, is that when somebody shows up and they are insecure or they are deemed desperate or whatever, someone will come along and say to them, "You need to be in love with yourself before someone else can love you." And and that's more along those lines. And
I don't believe that's true, but I do believe you have a more positive relationship when that is when you love yourself.
Because, well, I think you don't want to have you in a position of having somebody make you feel comfortable with yourself or make you feel comfortable with being with them. You're either going to be comfortable with them or not. That's the whole point.
all right, so now we go for the punchline real quick here, and that is
Can you let me
the patriarchy. And this particularly is the patriarchy. I'm excited about this one. Go right ahead.
Let me just finish this one. And now I forgot my thought. Thanks.
But the point is, but now we sneak into the whole patriarchy thing, because this is where we get into this idea about like whether or not someone is going to come and complete you, and they're going to
The fairy tale.
the fairy tale. And so our society sets it up that we are complete, which is what I do believe you have been talking about and dancing around this whole time. Like, we can go out on dates by ourselves and society doesn't look at us weird. We can feel confident in ourselves and all the rest of stuff. But a woman, she's incomplete until she can pull a man.
I mean, that has been, I guess, the theory behind that. And I don't know, I agree that that is a problem because in a marriage, you can't go 50-50. You have to go 100-100. And that is, I think,
Lecture Dr. Abercrombie.
I think that is the biggest misnomer about marriage is that it's a 50-50 thing. It is. It's a synergistic thing, but it's also, if you don't give 100%, you may have a second marriage on the way or you got a divorce on the way.
Well,
But that's just
just so people know what I'm talking about.
right. And Dr. Abercrombie is one of our professors from back in the day.
And he had a series of black male-female relationships, and he was discussing that in a relationship it should be 51-49. Now, of course, from Dr. Abercrombie's perspective, if men are responsible for themselves, quote unquote, then they have to prove that they get the other 1%, but they got to prove it. Otherwise, based on the society's concept of patriarchy, you don't get the 1%, extra 1%. Versus varies 50-50 versus or 100% versus 100%. Because that would be 200%, which mathematically is
No, it's 100% from each person giving into a relationship as opposed to a 50-50. But that's a whole nother thing that, but like you said,
So that whole point about loving yourself and feeling complete by yourself, while society tells us that we are complete and women are not, that is one of the things that that can mess with someone's mind when they're talking about whether or not I am lovable because no one loves me.
right. Why is there nobody coming to save the day for me?
Captain Save us. Well, you know.
But also, what another thing with the patriarchy is we get into negging. You're familiar with that term, negging?
Negative.
It's where someone will show interest in you, and then when you start showing some vibes back, they'll give you a criticism or undercut one of the things that you thought was valuable or that they thought, and what they do with that is that they're kind of fishing to knock you down a peg. And when you're like, oh my gosh, I thought I was really handsome. I thought I was really pretty. And they're like, you know what? You're just a 7 out of 10. And then they'll be like, you'd be a 9 if you'd be a 10 if you. And so like, that's the part of the negging. It's not just the undercut.
Right.
It's the thing that now I control your value. And so
Did you watch Black Lady Sketch Show?
oh no, well I do watch it on occasion, but I haven't watched. They have that
They had
exact
a whole sketch on that.
exactly. But that's the thing is they flip it around so that now they have control. And so that's one of the things about like if you know your own value, if you have your own worth, when somebody comes along to you and they're like, ooh, I think you're really cute. We should go on a date, but you're really just a 7 out of a 10. You can be like, and I don't care. Bam. And like, that's part of the difference.
But yeah, and then guys will say they don't care more so because we are, I guess, they go ahead.
Okay, well, because then here comes the problem, right? Because we're supposed to be in the patriarchy of we're going to come to the woman's rescue and kiss her from the poison sleep. Men have their choices, right? So it's like giving men all the power to choose who they want to come to rescue.
Because we're the hunter, and then they have to receive.
And that woman might not be receptive of quote unquote use. Like, if women really flipped it around, it'd be like, woke up like, oh, yes, no, I really didn't want the kiss from you. Good night. Yeah. So, I mean, that whole patriarchy thing, I think that's why you have certain conflicts, because we have to admit that people have choices and that women should not be afraid to express their choices. And if you're dating yourself, you know what it is you want, you like, then you could say, you know what, I prefer to be with someone else. Then comes the next step, when women choosing, if they're out on by themselves, who they want to talk to or not talk to, or even having the courage to say, you know what, I like this person I met. Maybe I would like to talk to them, see, what we can do further.
Now, I do also want to talk about how this idea of you should not date somebody if you don't love yourself and how it affects men. Now, we are all in a general agreement that society, by and in large, says that we are individuals unto ourselves and that we could die bachelors and be successful at being a man that way.
Correct.
Whereas we recognize women are not necessarily in that same boat. Like if you die an old maid, oh my gosh,
Or spinster.
you just messed up.
Yeah, she died a spinster.
Right, all that kind of stuff, right?
The old maid is the one card you don't want to get.
She got 4 children and no man. Like, she's just a mess. Which is like one of the things. It's just like a weird placement. Like maybe she just wanted 4 kids and she didn't want a man.
Or maybe the men were just jacked up.
Right.
Or, and then you talk about Nick Cannon, Wilt Chamberlain, all the others got kids all over the
You
place.
got kids up rep. You got Ramses and you got Genghis Khan. Like they didn't stop. But the whole point, however, is that we do have men, boys, that still value their masculinity, identify their masculinity with how many women they can pull, or that they will identify themselves as saying like, you know what, I get this all the time, and video game chatter and other kind of places where people are mostly anonymous is they'll be like, oh, you're a virgin, you ain't getting anything or whatever. And it's like this weird, like constant background noise of like how their masculinity is measured by their access to sex or relationships. And that whittles away at that boy's or that man's mentality, that view of themselves of like, hey, I am a complete person. But here this person comes along and says, yeah, but you ain't getting any. And like now they start generating this self-conscious, this vulnerability where they're going to go out and be vulnerable to manipulative people. Some of them might be men, but mostly manipulative. I'm referring to mostly manipulative other men, like the alpha and the incels and the rest of those, who are going to come and say, like, you aren't a complete man until you do this. And the way you do this is you start doing this crazy regimen of exercise, this diet, you start treating people this way, you exude this whatever, blah, 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 blah. And it's a space for toxicity where that not loving yourself becomes a problem with who they date.
It's like saying that the person that you're dating validates you.
Because they're back to that. Exactly. That's that vulnerable spot in the typical man sphere.
Manosphere. Yeah.
Saying like, if she ain't gonna put out, are you really a good man for her?
Because then here's the other side of that, all right? When we talk about the male toxicity and the patriarchy, all right? Because the patriarchy says the stronger the male, right, the more apt the male is to be able to have all these choices of women that he can have. All right. Well, so if you're not 6 feet or above, if you're not 200 pounds of muscle versus 200 pounds of roundness, all right, well, then maybe that guy should be able to get more women. And then the one's like, yeah, he's cute and all, but he's dumb as hell, Like Chris Rock said in one comedy session, like, he was with the girl, he kept his mouth shut. He was 2 seconds away, she was pulling him down. Then he said something stupid. She said, nope, I was going to do it with you, but You show the stupidity, and then that's where the proof, meets the road. If you meet a woman who really is quote unquote a woman and wants something more than sex, then it's your patriarchy and all this. What I have for power really working for you. Having a lot of money may not always work for you. Having the looks may not always work for you. If you don't have any personality, spirituality, or whatever, social skills.
If you are getting those things for your own self because you like them, do that.
Yes.
If you are getting those things because you're trying to build a nest to attract someone, you're making a mess of things, which goes back to the idea on the flip side of what we were talking. Again, we don't have any women representing them, and so we're kind of conjecturing. Forgive us. But when it comes to women, what we view is that they are incomplete until they have a good man, a loyal man, or a man that they can keep. And so that's like the part that is equivalent here. Mm-hmm. But it's harder to explain because, again, we're supposed to be complete human beings. It's harder to explain to that man that says, I need to get $1 million before I'm 30 or else I'm going to die alone. Like, it's harder to explain to them that is outside. That's not really true. It's not really accurate because the system has been telling them so stringently, this is what you need to do.
What system are you at? But I know what you mean, though. I was going to say.
I mean, overall, I'm not saying that we're the exception, but I am saying that, clearly we didn't abuse that concept of, what it takes to get a woman, how much power I am one way or the other. But now here comes the other part, because you mentioned if women want to keep that quote unquote type of man that is going to come to the rescue, then what are they thinking I have to do to keep that kind of man, which might keep them in a toxic relationship because they think if I don't give in to this, he'll leave. Where are my other options? Because that other stereotype of women, men are seen as manly if they getting a woman and they 10, 20 years older than that woman. But if a woman does it, she's a cougar. See what I'm saying? So we're going to put another stereotype on that. And so then women are, like you said, see.
Or sugar daddy for the flip side of the man.
Flip side of a sugar daddy, right? Because there's some women that are smart enough to realize that. But then there's some sugar daddies that realize that too. Like, I'm really just going to sugar daddy because I don't want a relationship. That's all another story in and of itself. But I do think that what do women put themselves through if they don't love themselves? They think they need to do whatever it takes to hold on to this trope of what a powerful, stereotypical man is. What do they keep? And I think that's when you run into the pimps run it all the time. This is what you need to do because you don't know this and I do. Abusive, mentally abusive and physically abusive men do it all the time. Molesters do it to women because they want to get to a young girl all the time. Well, we stay in this relationship because he has this, that, and the other. And if I don't, we can't get this. Now you got the little girl in this. She grows up thinking that this is what you have to do. And it becomes a cycle versus.
Yeah. I mean, it has been a toxic thing. I mean, especially, we can get into it, but, the more that you are not knowing what you want and not willing to explore on your own what you want, gives more power to other people around you. Like, hey, you don't know what you want, come this way. I got you. We're going this way. Whether it's good or bad, you're going off a cliff, perhaps. But you're following a person, and it's, it's the, like the sheep or the flock. They're following the right master of their destiny as opposed to being the master of their own destiny.
So then the solution to inoculate yourself against this is?
Know thyself.
I do think that maybe it is that you have to be comfortable with yourself and quote, whether you call it dating yourself. If you're going out on your own and discovering yourself, realizing you don't need somebody to help you discover yourself, that when you're on this date, you're finding out about other, but not needing that person to validate you. I think that might be one of the solutions is, hey, can you go out on, ladies, don't be afraid to go out on your own. And you're going out on your own, you're not going out on your own to pull a man. You're going out on your own because the club got the best music or the best drinks, or you're going to a poetry session because you're not there necessarily to, pull AJQ, the poet, but you're there to listen or you participate for yourself, discovering yourself by yourself.
Or people who go to church like for your own spirituality as opposed to, hey, that's a good spot to pull a man or a spouse.
And
That's not a good idea.
add this one thing. Well, you go out by yourself and you discover what you like and you discover what's out there, you become more knowledgeable to have a conversation with somebody when you do decide to have a date.
Yeah. And people like experiences and listening to experiences. And if you don't have an experience, that makes you a person that should either seek one out, or if you don't want to seek that out, have somebody that's like-minded about that, or you're back in the trip.
Now, I do believe that there is an inherent contradiction in the idea of going on a date by yourself to discover yourself versus without somebody else. And I don't think that it's very clean because the point being, I view every relationship, every interaction that you have with people, I view them like mirrors. Now, when I say mirrors, I want to clarify that the mirror can be dirty. The mirror can be cracked or warped. So the way...
Circus mirror.
Exactly. So you can go and meet somebody who looks at you in a distorted view, and there's might be some bits and truths in it, but the point is you need to recognize that they're distorted, and how would you know if that's the only mirror you've ever seen?
So, and that's true. So, for instance, the person you date views you in a certain light because that's how they know you. And as they get to know you, that shape that's in that clown mirror changes because, hey, that's not who I thought they were. Now I'm finding out who they really are. And that's...
Well, the important part about the mirror part is that you see who you are reflected back in the way that they treat you. And if you don't have a good idea, so like, let's continue that funhouse mirror thing. So you got 10 friends, imagine 10 mirrors looking at all different sides of you. And they're all of their reflections of who you are bouncing off of each other, and they're seeing you, and you look to the front and you see the front side of you, look to the side, you see that side of you. And like, if you don't know what a flat mirror, straight, pure mirror looks like, they're all going to have their own little distortions and punctures and all the rest of this stuff. And there's truth, but then you need to find out what you want to be. And part of that is getting that echo back, that reflection back, because you're looking in like, my hair is out of place. This thing is out of spot. I got a blemish here. And like, you can clean that up. So it's not always that it's no matter how close somebody gets to you and how well they know you, the amount that they could ever perceive you is limited, even though maybe they are the most complete view of any other person who's not you that they've had. But you still need to interact with them to investigate yourself, but also recognize that they might be distorted. So that's where it gets complicated because you find out, like, this person says, oh, you're an anxious person. And you're like, okay, well, maybe I am. And then you go by yourself and you realize, I'm only anxious around you, though. But you need that other experience so that you can go back with confidence and interact with that relationship and say, like, look, I understand you perceive that I'm anxious. This is the way that I express this, though.
And I get that.
Right. And so I think the idea of dating yourself to know yourself is a noble idea.
But you only know yourself as by yourself. When you interact with other people, then things change. Hormones take over, chemistry takes over, things like that.
Language limitations, time constraints, personalities.
Sure. So I know that just my wife, I'm more of a kind person since I've been with my wife. I'm just nicer. I share more, and sharing literally food. I don't share food when I'm by myself, or when I've been by myself, somebody asks me for some food, you gonna get your own? Not on my plate. And so, like, it's now that I have a wife, I can actually share with other people my food. I remember watching a show called Rules of Engagement where the food would go around in a circle and dude never got what he wanted because they were all sharing in it. He kept moving away from him. And I understood that very well.
You understood what it would mean to get a murder rap. You were like, this is going to happen.
So I understand that my personality changes in a relationship as well. And so I want to pick the person that brings out the best in my personality as opposed to the worst in my personality. I always feel bad around certain people that I've dated. I don't hang around with them, and I moved on. But I've learned to pick up on that for myself. Like, hey, that person's not right for me, or those things are good.
Basically, around you with food.
It was
I always make these movie references.
Right.
It was like two could play that game when Lewis Fox or mother said, no, it was Gabrielle Union's mother that said, well, you know a man will love you if he'll share his food with you the last bite. So in the middle of the movie, he was like, well, are you going to eat that? I was like, oh, yeah. Right? Then at the end of the movie, she realized that he cared about her because they were...
That's a good analogy for me, yes. Because
he was
at the beginning of our relationship...
Like, I want some cake. Oh, we don't have anyone. He's like, here, baby, have a bite of mine. So,
yeah, because at the beginning of my real relationship...
Barry will not share a slice of pizza with you. I don't care if you're married to him or not.
My wife could not get a piece of pizza. Now she can. And so that was our first fight, our literal first fight.
Now, another thing that I want to speak about is we talked about things from a perspective of what the typical male experience is. We got one ingredient in that we are older. I will easily admit that when I was younger, I was much more vulnerable to that insecurity, much more looking for that validation through relationships. And it is just like when there's all these memes, all these posters that say that when women hit 30 or 40, they get that healthy dosage of no more giving fucks. So they don't really care about those people's. They've established more of themselves. They know that, and they're letting go of that validation. But I will recognize that when I was younger, I was very vulnerable to that, which also caused some stress in relationships when they weren't working out, or when I was trying to make them work out because I was trying to make things happen or keep things happening. But I also want to bring up that there are different experiences that people have that are atypical than what we would consider.
Right.
Whether they have personality disorders, whether they have some mental disorders, or whether they just experience some psychological injuries growing up through trauma or bad home training or whatever. And saying to them, those people who know there's something wrong with them, that they need to love themselves before other people can love them, is rather cruel, if you ask me.
I know it. Okay, I get you.
And the thing that I would flip that to be is you don't have to love yourself to be loved by someone else. But you don't look to that person to replace the love you should have for yourself.
Right. And I understand that.
100%. Oh,
Yeah, go ahead.
no, I'm saying 100%. I agree.
I think that's part of what the spirituality for many people is, that when the person feels like they can't love themselves, they look to God, like somebody loves me. I can't love myself right now, for whatever reason it is. I know that for me, not everybody is spiritual, but for me, I look introspectively as a young kid because I lost my sight as a teenager. And I was like, why is this happening to me? What's going on? So my focus has been more introspective from a long time ago, just from that, being an athlete, to no longer having the ability to do athletics like I could when I was a kid, because I would literally be unable to see anymore to participate in these things. And so that changed my perspective on life as a whole, as opposed to just relationships with other people, where I had to get to know myself early on, because I couldn't even go to school for a certain period of time in my recovery. So I had to take literally about 6 months to recover and figure out how to navigate life with limited vision. And it took some time to get used to it. And my go-to for any tragedy in my life is anger. So I was very angry and had to manage that. And luckily, my mom helped me in managing my anger, because it's hard to do. I mean, I was mad at nurses trying to help me navigate my food. Like, I don't want your help. Now, a blind person saying, I don't want your help, is taught myself, help those who want to help themselves, as opposed to just trying to help people. But just from my own experience, because not everybody wants help, even though they're not in the best of position. And so, like you said, hey, I don't love myself, but I'm not in that position to try to fix that right now. Leave me alone. I get it. No, I understand.
Yeah.
So when those kind of things come up, it can, when that phrase comes out about like you need to love yourself before you love someone else, it can further the isolation, because the person who is suffering through depression or anxiety or their trauma is going to be less likely to ever reach out and form relationships that could become those mirrors that they need. And it puts things in a weird position, because someone who's going through those, trying to recover from a trauma or trying to figure out what that means to them, they're going to let people down. They're going to disappoint them. They're going to hurt them. And who wants to volunteer to be that person? And so again, we get into this problem where it's like, hey, I know you have some trauma that you're trying to work through. I want to date you because I think you're cute or whatever. Or maybe you're a recovering addict or something like that. And they'll bond with them. And creating the next part is that this person comes in vulnerable. And if this newcomer is abusive, then they can just play with them like a kitten plays with the toy mouse. But if they are there to actually support them, if that person starts to gain themselves their own footing and all the rest of the stuff, their relationship has to change in order to maintain, because they will grow into somebody that new person can't control. It shouldn't have any destiny about, and will now have to deal with in the 3 years, 10 years, 15 years that it needs to develop. And I've seen this happen with people when they just started off relationships. And I've seen this happen with people who have established relationships that had this imbalance, where someone was abusive or abusing their own drugs or even abusing other people. And this person said, I love you anyway. And this person had to work on it. And when they worked on it and developed these new boundaries, developed these new concepts, and actually recovered from the things that had been done, the things that they had been doing to other people, this person no longer had a space in their life. And that's a hard sell to say, hey, go find yourself a depressed person, date them until they're happy again. Why would anybody want to do that?
Well, actually, we call that a codependency relationship.
It can be.
Yeah. Well, basically, the person that's controlling the person or even being abused by that person is only comfortable if they have that person that is either, like you said, dependent on drugs or something else. And then they feel that that's the only person that they can work with. Or the person that's in the relationship with a codependent person might accept abuse from a drug-dependent person or whatever, because that's the way they only get their validation
But I would
by
say, yeah.
compensating to that person.
But yeah, but I was going to go with the growth for, I guess, the unconditional love of the person that's helping the person that's going through stuff, who's like, okay, I'm gonna get you to where you need to be, and then set them free, in a sense, to be who they need to be after that. I think is, like a selfless love. That, hey, okay, you're good now, okay, and that's any relationship. I think. Can have that situation, that I think the one,
Friends, relatives, whether you're married to them, but you have that kind of
or
relationship.
as children grow, you can't keep a child in the house and expect the child to prosper the same way as you give them the freedom to then be their own person. For instance, so as for instance, a parent who is a person who wasn't a parent then becomes a parent. That person changes as a parent. But, females who had the kids physically, biologically change. So they are not the same person after they started that process of giving life. So that's going to be a new person. It's like a cocoon. And when the child comes out, so the mother comes out a different person as well. So it's not the same person that you met prior to the inception and a result of a new child. You now have a different person. It's a different human being. And while the name is the same and their attributes can be the same, they may have literally biologically changed because their bodies had changed. They had a whole new person in there that created, boom, somebody else. And so their personality itself stays intact, but some of the things that were a nuance before is not the same. Like they now may have an allergy or something that came up, or they may whatever the child is going through, they went through initially. And so, like my wife and her mom were talking about, they love certain foods, and then when they had kids, they had aversion to the foods that they loved the most, and the food that they hated the most, now they can eat with the new child that came through to them, for instance. It's like, now that we had steak and these certain type of potatoes, that's your favorite meal, is no longer going to be your favorite meal from that change. Now it's, okay, now our dining experience may be a little different because now you want, hey, that's what we did when we first dated. Let's do that again. Like, no, I don't want to do that. Why not? Well, now the taste have actually changed. It's a literal change.
I do want to loop back to that, to one detail about if you're talking about the anxieties that you have, the depression, or if you are abusive to people, or you have been abused and all the rest of stuff, being involved in other people's lives provides you the mirror so that you can work on yourself. But you have to get therapy. You have to get therapy. You have to go to support groups. You have to do all the work independent from them, because that is going back to the vulnerability codependency. Because you can find somebody who has a true and earnest intent to love you for who you are, and even when you are after, or whoever you become after. But if you have not established who you are outside of them, then you are inviting disaster later, which now we circle all the way back to the dating yourself part, where this person who needs this recovery, who needs this assistance, who wants to improve themselves or whatever, they have a life that is distinct from the person that they are involved with. And that makes them more capable of going out, enjoying life. And they are in the relationship because they want to be in the relationship, not because they are dependent on the relationship.
Right. I got to. Well, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with Barry's Poetic Session, the relationship show.
Hi, I'm the Creative Roy, and you're watching Barry's Poetic Session.
Welcome back to Barry's Poetic Session, the relationship show with our panelists, the Creative Roy, Brother Black, and myself. Barry, a.k.a. The Dark Knight. And we're talking about dating yourself first. Should you do that before you get involved with someone else? So what would we come up with? What is our conclusions here? What have we thought?
I actually have two questions, both of them flipping on flip side on either of those, if you don't mind.
Sure, go ahead.
Have you dated? Can you tell us a tale of someone who you dated who you would have prescribed this to?
Dating yourself.
And also, I mean, I'm asking you too. So again,
Yeah, so someone who should date themselves first.
someone who you got involved with that you would have been like, hey, go date yourself for a bit, come back later. And what did that look like? I mean, how did that feel?
That sounded like that would have been just a one date. And I didn't even say go date yourself. It was more like, yeah, I'm good. We don't match. And I didn't even give them that.
What did it feel like? Like describe like how did that plant down as a red flag for you? Like what were some of the things that you were like?
It was, well, first it said, Barry, you're doing too much taking me to this restaurant. I've been finding Burger King or McDonald's.
Who was that person again?
Yeah, this is when I was working downtown as a stockbroker, and I was just doing too much to begin with. But I was not. But I hated McDonald's at this point, so I wasn't eating at McDonald's. So when the person said, "I want McDonald's," I'm like, I can't.
I'm a stockbroker. I can't do it. I'm sorry.
No. I was like, now you know how much I like to eat.
Right.
And the girl I was seeing for probably a decade that should have ended in 6 months was feeding me McDonald's so much that I'd rather not have any more McDonald's in the rest of my life, right? And the only thing I would eat is the McDLT, and they got rid of that. So
We that old, just letting you know.
yeah, so I'm done with eating at McDonald's. I don't eat McDonald's to this day. And so when the Big Mac thing came back for a quarter, I was like, I don't think so. I'd rather I'd rather have Little Caesars pizza than McDonald's. And you know how bad that is.
But what were some of the indications that this person gave to you that you are now thinking to yourself that would have been the advice that they need to go work on themselves?
Well, they just they felt like they didn't deserve the treatment they were getting, or it was too much. They weren't accustomed to different experiences. They'd rather have just something and I can understand, they just wanted something that was just basic in their mind, and they didn't want anything beyond basic. And I said, that's okay, but they worked around people who I guess didn't navigate that way, and they seemed like they felt troubled in their situation. It wasn't like, okay, this person is comfortable eating at McDonald's, and I get that. Like, I'm comfortable getting Little Caesars. I don't have a problem with that. It's not about Little Caesars versus McDonald's. It's about not receiving or enjoying the moment of something greater than, hey, I'm never leaving Cincinnati. Like Northern Kentucky is out of town for them. So we're going across the river. It was just more of it was not only just incompatible, but they didn't feel like they could do any more than where they were.
That's okay. So yeah, so that was your take, is that when you were interacting with them, they gave the vibe that they had no more interest in exploring anything, that they were. It's not quite set in their ways, but they just weren't.
They were in their 20s, and they were like, I'm gonna go to, well, not like a buffet with no taste in it, but just I didn't want to explore anymore, and I'm only 20.
That was that for you. All right.
Yeah, I'm good.
Where do I begin? I think one of the indications I have for a person that I would have said, maybe you need to date yourself to, develop, not necessarily develop yourself, but to develop and realize how really special you are. I had one particular issue where the person seemed to always think that I was seeing someone else, or that I was potentially going to see somebody else, who was put it that way.
Yes.
And always doing like, well, is that what you want? Is that what you want? You know, and when I say that's that what you want, I'll give you an example. We were actually out on a date, and we were at the mall, and they, you know, at the mall there used to be Sir Frederick's of Hollywood, and we happened to be walking by that path, and I looked at Sir Frederick's on. I was like 21, so that's why this happened. So I was looking at Sir Frederick's of Hollywood and looking at this particular lingerie. And she said, "Is that what you want?" I won't be offended if you say that's what you want. But in my mind, if I say yes, I'm thinking this is a trap. Because the lingerie I was looking at actually would have been perfect for her if we'd been further down that road. And I was actually seeing her in that lingerie. But she could say, "Was that what you want?" In the back of my mouth, like, don't you answer that question. Don't you answer that question. So being 21, I was like, well, yeah, quite frankly, that is what I want.
And how'd that work out?
How'd that work out for you?
Now,
Always go with your gut.
Now, here's the twist. While I was looking at the lingerie, she was looking at the women inside Sir Frederick's in Hollywood. And she was thinking that I was like, you know, in front of her. So while I was looking at the lingerie, she was looking at these women thinking that that's what I wanted. So when I said, yeah, well, that's what I want, big mistake. So it got a little icy for, you know, for about, we'll just say 30 minutes. But I made her realize that, no, this is what I want. You win. So, but I would have told the person, because there were other instances, like if I missed a phone call for a day, I might have came home late, whatever. Well, where'd you go after this date? I went home. No, you didn't.
Oh,
I
I'm
called.
sorry. You got to tell the audience. This was before cell phones.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. Google it.
This is during not just push button, before push button dialing.
Right.
When
Even if you call the guy after a date, it's kind of almost like you're trying to check up on him. So, and in my mind, I really didn't realize, because the question came like a week later. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, 21-year-old male, 61-year-old male, they don't remember exactly where they went after they left the date. They just going to say they went on. They might have went to a restaurant, which later on somebody else reminded me, oh, you went to Perkins. Because you saw that you went to UC, you went to Perkins with the guys, and we was all talking about the game. But that flew out my mind a week later. But she was like, oh, no, you were with somebody. And again, she said, I won't mind, I won't be hurt. And it got so bad that it was like, okay, this ain't gonna work. If I had known the trust issue and the insecurity issue, then I probably would have said to that person, you go out and date with yourself so that you could realize how special you are, which it's kind of surprising, because trust me, men were bold enough to talk to her in front of my face while I was out with her. And I had to be like, oh, here it comes. You know.
That reminds me of somebody I actually met, but go ahead.
But yeah, so when it comes to meeting somebody who I think, and I think this is I think should have had some time to themselves. And that happened many times in my 20s and 30s. I dated a lot of people who reacted to my own codependence. It was like we were just those magnets that were just attracting each other because we could just pick up on it. So when I entered my 20s, and it was just relationship after all the rest of the stuff. Like being young and attractive and a little bit outgoing and all the rest of that stuff. It wasn't, even though I'm not the smoothest talker, it wasn't hard. But that was also part of the problem, is that I would just go from person to person. the person who needed time by themselves, me. It was also some of the people that I had dated that they also needed it. And the thing was that when I was
You were doing what young people now do, Tinder, basically.
yeah, but I was looking, but I knew I wanted something serious and lasting. I've never dated anyone with the intent of a one night stand. I've always wanted the home run, and like that was part of my vulnerability that I needed to work on, and dealing with going to therapy, going to support groups, working on myself, having these relationships, and being more deliberate and intentional about the interactions and all the rest of that stuff. So that was me. Now, you couldn't have told me that at the time because it's a very offensive thing to take and say, like, you need some time to be by yourself. Like, if you really want to be with that, like, if they really want to be with you when you say that, that's like one of the worst, like, insults ever. That's like, I don't want you, and no one should want you.
I get that.
Get it? I get it.
But I needed that, and many of the people that I had dated at the time needed that as well, because we were very vulnerable to being codependent, and whereas there were not like abusive situations, like super manipulative or whatever, there's you can also define it as abuse because there were also those same kind of reflections where they would presume I was cheating on them or that I was looking the other way or that I had to justify where I've been and what I did to a point where that satisfied their standards. So one other thing I find interesting is that the person who you described was insecure, whereas the person who you described, I don't want to know, but it sounded like they were quite secure because they were like, I'm in my little hut. And
Yeah, they were secure at a young age of, hey, just feed me some, going to Red Lobster is way too fancy. And I went way beyond that. I took her to an Italian restaurant. But she's like, I ain't ever doing this again. I ain't around this property.
Yeah.
And so I get that. And I understand that. But I was like, but she's so young, it's like not going to invest in anything.
right, what's going to positively change that for you? Like there's some guy who probably finds that really interesting or what they wanted. Like,
I knew a bunch of people who liked just that, hey, let's do Burger King and cool. But I'm not that, I wasn't that one.
But I have my own theories because I do believe that for a time McDonald's was put crack in the salt for the French fries. That's why it was so good.
Now I will say this.
Well, I gotta say this. Watch your kids when you drive McDonald's. You be like driving by Burger King, like, let's go to Burger King, get some fries. Be like, nah. You drive McDonald's, you ain't gotta say nothing. They be like, McDonald's fries. I'm telling you, they put your kitty crack in McDonald's fries.
Well, I will say this though. They did have a news article. They said that overseas, all around the world, McDonald's fries are made with the same potatoes and the same process all around the world. And I've been overseas and it didn't taste any different.
Can't confirm.
No, I did have a McDonald's that was overseas that did taste different. Like, I'm telling you, when I saw Coming to America, then I went overseas and I was like, they really is McDonald's. They stole. I went to a European place where they stole, like they have fake Pringles, they have fake McDonald's, and they called it McDonald's just like the movie. And it was across the street from the real McDonald's.
Well, all I'm saying is that if you can get McDonald's all around the world and they use the same process, they're only doing it because it works.
Right. And not
Kitty crack works. I'm just saying.
So that was that question. The other one was there ever a time that you should have been the one to have dated yourself?
Before I met my wife, I was like, I'm dating myself. I'm doing my 30-day pizza challenge. She's like, no, she's an interloper. Like, no, we're not doing that. You need to stop. Don't do that. So yeah, when I get into, after any long relationship, I usually take a break. But I didn't when I ended up dating somebody I shouldn't have, like right after. It was a very short period of time. I think it was a week after I started seeing somebody new. And I was like, I needed more time. And I learned from that mistake. I was like, because then I kept running into people who were like, hey, you should have been dating me or da da da. And it's like, I know you just broke up with so and so because I just saw you a couple weeks ago. And so I realized for myself, like I said, I have a lot of introspection on me. Hey, I didn't take the time I needed. But also, I know for myself that when I don't take the time, I make some bad decisions. And I made some bad decisions. But luckily, I didn't make them last as long. I try to learn from different mistakes as opposed to making the same mistake over them.
Shoot, I'd probably say what? The first 5-6 years of my dating life, when I say dating, like when I'm independent to do it on my own, I'm probably 21 to 26, 27 years old. Probably would have been a good idea if I just dated myself in perspective of I would learn to communicate more with the opposite side of the opposite sex. Even like if my feelings were hurt, I would just be like, well, that's it. I'm not going to talk to you anymore. Like bold beard, not going to talk to you. And that's not communicating because the person might have did something that they didn't intend to do, or even if they did intend to do it, you would at least know why, and then you wouldn't repeat that mistake with somebody else. But if you knew what was going on, you could communicate that and develop the relationship from that point on. So yeah, probably about that.
And yourself.
Oh, yeah, I covered at the same time that I would say that they need to date themselves. I needed to date myself at those early years. Like I was working on myself at those times. It was just imperative. Now, to me, the idea, one final thing about the whole dating yourself concept. Things started getting better when I accepted that if I ended up by myself, that is an all right conclusion. And that is a hard pill to swallow in our society that pressures a lot on being coupled up. But I can't say that that's necessarily the goal that everybody would have.
Well, I'm thinking since I was a young kid, it's getting better because I know that when my parents got divorced, we were shunned and it's way different now. So I want to thank everybody. Again, our panelists, The Creative Roy, Brother Black, and I'm your host, a.k.a. The Dark Knight. And we'll see you next time on Barry's Poetic Session, The Relationship Show. Peace.